Hey everybody, and thanks for tuning in to the Ephrata Community Church weekly podcast. Conversation with our pastors and leaders meant to continue encouraging you to know God, know freedom, know purpose, and make a difference.
Hey, Ephrata Community Church, it's great to be with you once again for this week's podcast. Joined here by our teaching pastor, Jim Ehrman. Jim, it's great to be with you once again.
Good to be here.
And this week we're going to be unpacking a little bit more of your sermon this past week, but there's something Jim has really pressing on his heart and mind. What is that, Jim?
This is Matt Swords, the pastor of discipleship.
It's a very important detail.
It is now lifted from my heart.
You feel better?
Yes, feel much better.
Good. I'm so glad. That is what we do here at ECC. We help to lift the loads that people are carrying week in and week out. So thankful to be part of that ministry this morning. So welcome to you guys. We're going to be unpacking Jim's sermon from this past week. And his title was Fight for the First Step. And this was the last teaching in our series on biblical friendships. Yep. And it really set up our fall semester where we're encouraging everyone to take one step in your walk with Jesus. And there's a whole host of ways that people can do that, in which you just really briefly mentioned each of them. It wasn't so much as saying like, here are specific ways, let me detail them for you, as much as it was this bigger picture of here's the importance of being in community.
That's right.
And really diving deep into that importance, and then saying, oh yeah, and by the way, here's a number of ways that we do that here, and now is the time to take that step. So Jim, as always, really appreciate just the way you capture the vision and the heartbeat of why we do what we do here in the different discipleship programs, but they're all great in their own right, but yet there's a deeper heartbeat behind it as the importance of community. So I want to give you the opportunity just to dive deeper into that.
Yeah, first of all, thanks. Take one step. I want to start there. I think one of the powerful things that we looked at in John 1 is when Jesus is calling the disciples is that phrase. And I didn't spend a ton of time on it, like come and see. Yeah. It's amazing at the beginning of the scriptures, in the beginning of Jesus' ministry, that it's really a low threshold. It's like, well, you have hopes and dreams of what it means to be a Jewish kid looking for a Messiah. Why don't you come and check it out? Or, hey, we think we found something that works. I feel seen, Nathaniel. Come and see. I just love the come and see, and I think I want to make sure that as we move into a new semester here at ECC, that's what we're encouraging people is, I don't actually know how God's going to meet people. Yeah. We've built some things that we think God can use, but face the facts, every one of those disciples had a different experience with Jesus. I mean, some shared experiences, but some very unique. So we're just encouraging, take one step, and then I just loved unpacking, hey, here's different ways that Jesus met, even in that short 10 verses, different people, whether or not it was divine intervention, right, with Nathaniel giving him a word of knowledge, whether it's looking at Peter and giving him an identity thing, whether or not it's meeting Andrew and Philip when they actually leave John to come to him and he greets them and invites them. You know, I just love the way Jesus connects with different people. I can't wait to see how he connects. I just can't be sure how it's going to work for you, but taking one step is everything, right? Yeah,
and the most important part of that is the individual in their heart saying, God, I'm willing to take one step. It's almost like, invite me into what you have for me, right? It's not a prescribed one size fits all. This is the step everyone needs to take. As much as it's everyone needs to posture their heart in such a way so as to say, I want to take a step.
That's exactly right. And that's one of the reasons why, if you were listening on Sunday, if you didn't catch it, even to join a serve team, like, you know, we can sit and set up connect groups, which I think connect groups are some of the most powerful. And I'd like to talk about that because I think we are better together. But let's all admit there's different personalities. And truthfully, some of you have backstories where jumping straight into a faith community at a certain level of the kind of open engagement that takes place at a connect group, or coming to maybe some of the deeper studies we're doing in Thrive or in the Institute for Christian Learning, that might feel like a step too far. The beauty is come and see and take one step means, and that might even just be serving. So I even encourage people, consider just serving on the AVL team or one of our usher teams or something. as a step and watch what God meets with. I think that's the awesome thing. We don't feel like we have to make it happen. Our job is, just like those early disciples inviting people, you take the step and Jesus has got to meet you, because or else we're the optimist club. We can't keep your Instagram feed will keep you optimist, right? But we're like, no, real life kicks in, and all we can do is show you Jesus and see when he meets you, right?
And specifically even serve teams, that's how I personally would have gotten engaged. Well, the bass guitar, so serving on the worship team. I would have been in connect groups, but it was so exciting to be able to serve in that way. And I know a number of people that, like, you sit them in a circle and you say, hey, open up. What is Jesus doing? And they're like, about to go throw up in their mouth or something. But you say, like, hey, we need somebody to help move mulch this weekend and make the property look beautiful. And people are like, hey, I can drive a tractor. I will do that. And,
that's right.
And in that, you get pizza for lunch, and all of a sudden there's some conversation that wouldn't happen otherwise. But it began with a person where you're meeting people or giving opportunity for people to engage in the way that they are most apt to do.
That's
so.
Right. That's right. Now, other people recognize you have the need for a form of fellowship. That would be our connect groups, or study does something for you when you're sitting around, you're reflecting on the Word of God. So then we have some growth groups, ICL, Thrive, Embark, and then of course our partnership with the Harvest Net School of Ministry. If you want to spend a significant season, by the way, they have night. I wanted to mention that too over the weekend. Harvest Net School of Ministry has switched to night modules, so the people who have daytime jobs can actually still be a part of just sitting in on stuff. So many ways to engage. Pretty pumped about it, but better together. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, we would have just had a meeting last night with our Connect group leaders, and one of the things we were talking about, which really comes out of your message this past weekend, we're better together, the importance of community, and how recently that's actually been informing all things discipleship here at ECC. The reality of what we've heard called and are using the language, transformative relationships, and the importance of having relationships around you that are actually transforming, that are catalyzing, that are thrusting you forward. And that reality is informing everything we do in every area of discipleship, whether a person is in the ICL or a connect group, that we're taking this value and need for transformative relationships and saying, how are we fitting that into the ICL or to Thrive or to Embark or what have you. And so, Jim, why don't you unpack for us a little bit of like the history of how that came about and how we arrived here at this place where now that we've discovered that and we're saying we need to make sure this is in everything that we're doing.
All right, there's a big debate between Matt and I. He claims it was a year ago. I'm in denial that it was only 6 months ago that Pastor Kevin came to him and I and Oliver Denlinger at the time and said, hey, would you guys do a study into discipleship here? And we really dove in, did a lot of research. So what you hear Matt referring to is we looked at a lot of organizations that disciple, then did like studies of their graduates, where they were, what was effective or not. And then we looked at some popular Christian psychologists who talk about how real change happens in the life. The number one thing that what's called resilience in a disciple, meaning they can handle and thrive in moments, they have vision for where they're going forward, they have the ability to serve, they have an interior life with Jesus. Number one thing was transformative relationships in their life. In other words, relationships that are supportive during critically difficult times, also catalytic when you need a friend to look at you. So even last night when we met with our Connect group leaders, we passed out 3 to 5 cards, and we had them write down 2 of the greatest spiritual revelations they've ever gotten in their journeys. And then we sat together and we realized that almost every single one of them in the room had been tied to someone who took the time to either meet them in the moment or pour into them over time. And so we sit and go, hey man, if we want to build disciples, that was Jesus's great commandment to his Eve, like go make disciples. We believe that transformative relationships are absolutely critical. Now that doesn't mean you can't get it on a Sunday morning where you're actually sitting and receiving from the preaching of the word. We even studied that this weekend, that the preaching of the word can bring a transformative moment. Get in prayer afterwards. In worship, you can have transformative. But there's no doubt you're going to hear this from us over and over. We are driving people to encounters with others because we believe it's important. And truthfully, post-pandemic, encountering the other is another, it's just such a powerful part of staying mentally healthy, much less thriving or having breakthroughs and stuff. Anyway.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And what I love about even the exercise we did last night, and anybody can do this at any point, is just reflecting on what are some of the more pivotal moments in my life that have gotten me to where I am now, and just reflecting on that. Most of the people's stories, I'll take, was it Kim Zook, for example?
Yeah.
She would have shared with Cindy, and it was like just an affirming compliment. It was just saying, hey, I see this in you and I'm going to speak it out, right? Where what I love about that story is it was impactful for Cindy. It shaped her, it encouraged her, it built her up. But what I know to be true that for Kim, that because I've been there as well, where it's like, oh, it didn't seem like that big of a deal to have done. It's like, it seemed like you could even do it in passing.
That's right.
And yet these simple moments actually make such big impacts. Small things make big differences, and why that's encouraging to me is because it's attainable for every single person.
That's
like
right.
You didn't need to be born with some spiritual gift to live a life that encourages everyone around you.
That's
That you're outward focused and you're saying, you know what, if I see something, then I'm actually going to take a moment and say it.
That's right.
Or if a person needs encouragement, I'm going to take the time to meet them, because those are the moments that we find that are shown to have made big impacts, more so than the dramatic storylines where a person has this crazy dream and an angel shows up and touches them, and then all these cool stories that are out there. The more the experiences that people have that shape them for the long term are actually the small moments.
Yeah, and I have to say this and fill in the gaps here on the story that you and I shared before, but I am huge into big moments. Like even when I shared over this weekend, I said, hey, through the preaching of the word, people seem to get closer. Through invitation, people seem to get closer.
Right.
Through divine intervention, we've all had divine intervention moments where Jesus actually comes to Philip and says, it's not even about anyone else inviting you, I'm inviting you. Or Jesus comes to Saul on the road to Damascus and says, hey, I'm inviting you personally to lay down this path you're on and follow me, right? So you do have these divine intervention moments, word of knowledge, etc. We love that, believe in it, believe it's a beautiful part of the spiritual life. But what you're hearing Matt and I say, here we are at a church that not only believes this, but sees God moves in that way, but we're still looking at you and going, the more powerful thing, according to the scriptures, is to be the people of God together, right? Yeah. And that is small, everyday things. And Matt highlighted something he heard me say in a sermon a couple sermons ago, where I was talking about why I go to ECC, and I said, well, because the first couple times I came to this place, when I was leaving, I realized I was thinking about my best self. Matter of fact, I couldn't even exactly put a nail on the exact revelation I was getting, but I left week after week reflecting on who I believe I was meant to be in the world. Not just self-reflecting, I believe that was the Spirit doing it too, but this place had an atmosphere.
You were convinced you could attain to that. You could ascribe to be like that. Like there was hope to take that step, and that's a wholesale experience.
Exactly, and that's what you get by being part of the community. Not every week can I walk away and tell you exactly what I got, but I tell you what I did get. I got soaked in what God's doing, and therefore I left somehow slightly changed for that daily life it takes, and then it builds to these amazing climactic moments sometimes.
One of my favorite parts of the research over the past couple years came out of a study from Bethel School Supernatural Ministry. And I'll just read one of the quotes, because Bethel School, they have over 8,000 alumni, and they would have done a research project. I can't remember. I don't know what the right language is, but they would have researched,
surveyed their people.
And have a 65-page report following. Anyway, one of the most impactful statements within that research project was this statement, where they found that the number one factor that contributed to success and a healthy, vibrant walk with Jesus after the school was consistent church attendance, which to me speaks to the necessity of a constant influx of the Word and of community that are encouraging you to go after Jesus. Sure. That constant influx of, I'm surrounded by people that are convincing me that this is not only important, but that how am I trying to say this? What I read in here is possible.
That's right.
That I'm surrounded by people that say this is attainable. That when I read the word and Jesus says, "You shall not covet," that, or like I can be free of this type of issue. Like there's freedom available.
That's right. Yeah, I always put it this way, man. If I hang out with people that work out a lot, I find myself thinking about working out.
Right.
If I hang out with people who are careful about their diet, I find myself being careful about my diet.
Yeah.
If I hang out with people who are talking about how powerful music is in their life and worlds, I find myself listening to music more often. It's simply a saturation principle, and that's part of being better together that we're trying to highlight. And why we have all these initiatives that we're inviting people to, because we know that when we're together, something happens.
Exactly.
Much less the divine intervention stuff. When that stuff happens, it's wonderful. So
it is absolutely wonderful. So, well, Jim, thanks for taking the time this morning to just go over this. And if you're watching and you're curious and you want to learn more about what opportunities are available, you can head to the website effortcommunitychurch.com/take1step. It lists all the different opportunities that are available to you. And we have an upcoming sermon series. Jim, why don't you explain what that's?
Yeah, you asked for it. Many of you, if you're used to our community, and probably those of you who follow the podcast are, every summer this year we had to bump it a little bit into the fall based on some other stuff that was going on. But we send mailers to 22,000 homes in the area, and then we also send out a survey to people within our immediate church community, and we say, what are some of the questions you're asking right now that we can address? So we're going to be taking 5 weeks to speak to 5 questions. I know I'm 2 weeks from now, and my question is, how do we handle conflict in the midst of such a polarized culture, right? Like interpersonal conflict. How many of you are going through stuff like that with your families or something in the midst of all that's going on?
That's not a relevant topic.
No, not in the least. So all that to say, it's those kind of topics, and Pastor Kevin will be kicking it off this Sunday. Hope you can be there, and we hope you have an amazing week.
Yeah, thanks for being with us. Take care.
Hey, thanks again for joining us today. We hope that you've been encouraged by listening, and that you'll join us again next week. You can listen to previous episodes, find additional resources, and of course, learn more about us by visiting effortcommunitychurch.com.